There's a famous mathematical statement called the Drake equation. The gist is it's trying to predict the number of intelligent civilizations out there in the universe. The idea is fairly simple. If you know the independent probabilities of a bunch of events, the chance of them all happening at once is just the product of those individual possibilities. In the case of the Drake equation, it's looking at probabilities like, what's the chance of a star having a planetary system? How many of those planets could we expect to live in the zone around the star that is hospitable for life? If you just have inorganic molecules to start with, what's the chance of organic ones coming from naturally occurring chemical mechanisms, and so forth? As we've learned more, most of those numbers have been actually revised upward, and it's my own contention that the universe is probably filled with life, and at least some of it is intelligent life. But this leaves us with a bit of a puzzle. Physicist Enrico Fermi responded to the Drake equation with a question, which is, where is everybody? The statement was true back when he said it, which was 1961. In the intervening 60 years, we've done a great deal of stellar surveying and found absolutely nothing in the way of an unequivocal sign of intelligent life. Now, to be fair, a huge amount of stellar surveying still only covers a minuscule fraction of the number of stars that are out there. If some intelligent civilization was saying, hi y'all, here we are, and we just happened to be tuned into a different frequency at the time or pointed at a different star, we might never know it. But there's a more sinister possibility, and it goes by the nickname of the Great Filter. The Great Filter looks at one of the variables in the Drake equation, the one that he used the letter L to stand for, which is, once you have intelligent life on a planet, how long does a civilization last? If we were to time travel 2,000 years into our own future, would we find a human civilization still on Earth? Or would we have destroyed ourselves with our amazing weaponry or our damage to our ecosystems? Or would we have exceeded our carrying capacity and ended up in what ecologists call an overshoot and rebound? But today I want to look at the Great Filter from a different perspective. Given that most astronomers think that the Drake equation indicates that life is common out in the universe, there's an open question about why we haven't seen it, and Enrico Fermi's comment is as apt as ever. Most of the answers to why this silence exists fall into three categories, which are given the names of the three Fs. We're first, we're fortunate, or we're fucked. Could we be the first planet in our region of the galaxy to develop intelligent life? Given the time gap between the earliest life forms on Earth, about 4 billion years ago, and the time when we became capable of sending an interstellar message, which was about 50 years ago, it's understandable that there might be some civilizations out there that simply haven't achieved the technological knowledge yet to be able to communicate with us. Consider, for example, if there was a planet orbiting Proxima Centauri, and the living beings down there were at a technological level that was only 200 years before where we are now. Not only would we not be able to communicate with them, they wouldn't be able to communicate with us. They would be, from our perspective, completely silent. However, considering the number of stars with planets just in our region of the Milky Way, I think that's pretty unlikely. Even if we were all on the same timescale, which I think is fairly unlikely given what we know of stellar evolution, there probably would be somebody out there, fairly close by, that was at a level where they could communicate with us and that we would be receiving messages. Add to that the fact that there are a lot of stars out there that are much older than the sun and therefore would have had millions of years to get way ahead of us. The fact that we're not hearing anything from them either means that possibility number one is fairly unlikely. Might we just be fortunate? There certainly are a number of hurdles to overcome before you get complex, intelligent life. Multicellularity itself seems to have happened because of a fluke, as did the symbiosis between our cells and our mitochondria, which increased our respiratory efficiency by a factor of 18 and allowed for much more complex use of energy. None of these are at all guaranteed, and while it's possible that you might have an intelligent species that didn't have some of these features or who solved those evolutionary problems a different way, it's kind of hard to see how they would advance very far. Then there's the evolution of sexual reproduction, which is important not just because it's kind of fun, but because it allows the reshuffling of genes every generation, increasing the variability of the population and thus its evolutionary fitness. This has allowed us to solve two problems at once. First, the issue of having a bunch of genetically identical individuals, all of whom then would be susceptible to the same pathogens. The second is nicknamed Muller's ratchet. It's a bit like a genetic game of telephone. When DNA replicates, it accrues mutations, typos if you will, and because these happen at an unpredictable rate and in unpredictable places, if you give it long enough, the entire DNA message will be turned into complete gibberish. Sexual reproduction allows us to escape Muller's ratchet by picking up extra copies of important genes, and therefore the mutations that knock out particular copies don't matter as much. But no one knows how likely the evolution of sexual reproduction actually is, or even if it's as critical as I've suggested. The third possibility, we're fucked, is, as you might guess, the most alarming. It postulates that the Great Filter, what's eventually going to knock out civilizations, lies ahead of us. The reasons for this are varied and are all rather depressing. It could be that the L in the Drake equation, how long civilizations last, is quite short. Eventually they destroy themselves. It could be that there are inevitable cosmic catastrophes that take place that eventually make planets uninhabitable, things like Wolf-Rayet stars and gamma-ray bursters, either of which, if it went boom near the solar system, would be seriously bad news. Then there's Elon Musk's worry that eventually intelligent civilizations will develop artificial intelligence technology, and then it backfires spectacularly. Back in 2017, Musk warned that we should probably slow down or maybe even stop AI research because there's no reason to think that a sentient artificial intelligence would consider us all that important. Here's what Musk said. With artificial intelligence, we are summoning a demon. You know all those stories where there's the guy with the pentagram and the holy water, and he's like, yeah, he's sure he can control the demon. Never works out. By far the most sinister idea, though, is that we're doomed because eventually all technological species reach the ability to communicate via radio waves. We did that back in the 1930s and 1940s, and now there is an expanding bubble of radio signals traveling at light speed away from the Earth. And the problem is, that might eventually be picked up by a technological civilization way ahead of us. And that civilization would respond by stomping on us. Stephen Hawking actually addressed this back in 2015. We don't know much about aliens, but we do know about humans. If you look at history, contact between humans and less intelligent organisms have often been disastrous from their point of view. And encounters between civilizations with advanced versus primitive technologies have gone badly for the less advanced. A civilization reading one of our messages could be billions of years ahead of us. If so, they will be vastly more powerful and may not see us as any more valuable than we see bacteria. Which, given that the first traces of our civilization these ultra-intelligent beings are likely to run into are reruns of The Andy Griffith Show and Leave It to Beaver, is kind of an understandable reaction. So there you have it. If we did contact another intelligent civilization, it would be good news from one standpoint. The Great Filter hadn't knocked out everybody in the universe except for us. But it would be a seriously bad piece of news from another respect. I guess everything's always a mixed bag. But man, I would still love to see it happen. I would like nothing better than if an alien spacecraft landed in my backyard. Okay, it'd kind of suck if it turned out that they were Daleks or Cybermen or whatnot, but for the first 3 minutes, it would be a hell of a rush. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up. Our resources are down there, and please subscribe to our channel. Thank you.